You could say Toronto's housing issues are stuck in a loop. We need more housing supply, but what's being built, people aren't buying because it's too expensive.
It's a pretty universal aspiration, homeownership, right? And I think a lot of the younger generation are feeling desperate.
At the same time, developers say it's almost impossible to build right now because it's too expensive.
Their margins have been squeezed substantially by higher costs. If developers obviously could lower prices to attract sales, they would do so. Lowering prices effectively makes the projects unfeasible for development.
So people aren't buying, builders aren't building. Adding to the complexity is what appears to be a divide on how to best boost supply. Developers want governments to step in to make things cheaper so they can get back to building. But the City of Toronto says if developers won't build what the city needs, it will.
Right now, the housing market is stuck. The cost of building is sky high. Today, we are taking action.
First, let's look at the cost to build. These are municipal fees only. Toronto is the second most expensive in the GTA when it comes to both low and high-rise housing, according to a study by the Building Industry and Land Development Associations. So what exactly are those municipal fees? Take a look. Out of that long list, developers say what's driving up costs the most is development charges. You've probably heard that term before, but what are they really? Development charges are a type of tax that help the city pay for the infrastructure needed to service new housing. Think water, transit, roads, parks, libraries. Every single condo, rental, or home that gets built in Toronto must pay development charges. And just like everything else, they keep getting more expensive. How much they cost depends on dwelling type. Singles and semis cost the most. Take a look at 1- and 2-bedroom condos. From 2 years ago to now, development charges in Toronto have gone up more than 40%.
Every single one of those dollars has to be paid for somehow, and it ultimately means the price of the homes have to go up.
This longtime developer got together with more than 30 others to say enough's enough. They started a group called the Coalition Against New Home Taxes, calling on the government to cut fees and taxes, pledging to reduce the price of all homes dollar for dollar.
Development charges get paid for when you break ground, when you pull your first permit. HST gets paid for at the end. Land transfer taxes get paid for at the end. If none of these projects start and none of these homes get built, not only are you not going to get any of those taxes, you also won't get the property taxes on these homes. So I think it's in everyone's best interest to act very quickly.
Can you talk to us about the increase and why the increase was made to the charges and fees?
It's important to remember that's phased in over a number of years, and it's after a period where they were frozen for a number of years. If you look at it over a decade or two, our development charges are increasing by not much more than inflation.
You feel that the development charges and fees in Toronto are fair?
They're absolutely fair. The City of Toronto is restricted by law in terms of what kinds of revenue sources we have. We're stuck pretty much with property taxes, development charges, and a little bit from something called the land transfer tax. If we didn't collect those fees and charges, property taxes would skyrocket in the City of Toronto.
Not only do development charges pay for things like roads and water to service a new housing development, the city also uses them as a funding tool. As part of its 10-year capital budget and plan, the city says development charges fund a total of $5.7 billion worth of projects. You probably recognize some of them. They're massive projects all over the city with massive price tags.
The idea that that is just going to be placed on the backs of new home purchasers, of new home buyers, of new tenants is completely unfair. The whole city is going to benefit from those investments.
The vice chair of the city's Housing and Planning Committee says the city needs to rethink development charges and how it pays for large-scale projects.
Well, look, I would start with the fact that sitting today in our development charge reserve fund, we have $3.2 billion sitting there. This age-old notion, from planning that was growth pays for growth, people understand that, but it's not realistic. And that is why no one's collecting more money and more revenue off of housing than local governments.
Karen Chappell studies housing across North America. She says government fees like development charges can have an unintended consequence.
I think we probably need to rethink how we finance infrastructure generally, right? In the big picture, we are probably financing it inefficiently by just taxing new development, because that's actually hindering us building enough housing supply.
With nearly 24,000 new condos currently sitting empty and up for sale in the GTA, she says there's a lesson to be learned, that buyers want family-friendly housing, think low-rise, larger units with outdoor spaces, at prices they can actually afford. The City of Toronto says it has a plan to get that job done by becoming the biggest developer in the country.
We're taking lands we own or lands that not-for-profit corporations own, and developing our own housing that offers supportive housing for people who struggle to manage their own home, affordable housing for people who can't afford Toronto rents, and just straight rental as well. And we're on the path to become one of the largest developers in the country ourselves, so that we're building the housing people actually need, instead of building the housing that is going to make an already rich person richer.
Yet again, though, on this City Hall and even members of the committee responsible for getting this done is divided.
Local government never does something faster and for less money than the experts out there in the private and not-for-profit sector. So we need to focus on collaboration. We need to focus on working together. We don't have that type of expertise or experience at City Hall. We're not going to be able to hire it from the private sector. So, this idea that the mayor has been pushing of the public builder, if it yields any housing, it will be the most expensive, affordable housing in the country's history.
The city may have its plan, but it hinges on all levels of government working together. The province tells CBC it's investing more than $3 billion to help cities and towns pay for critically needed housing by exempting development charges for not-for-profit and affordable housing and discounting development charges 25% on family-friendly purpose-built rentals. The federal Liberals tell us they've made historic investments during the housing crisis with several programs, including the Housing Accelerator Fund, which works to reduce red tape and build more affordable housing. If there's any consensus, it's that right now construction has stalled. New housing isn't being built, and supply in the GTA in the next few years is in jeopardy, which means relief when it comes to long-term affordability could still be a long way off.